Hello, thank you for choosing our Low Mood Toolkit workshop today. This is an on-demand presentation brought to you by the NHS Talking Therapy Services. So that's Norfolk and Waveney Talking Therapies and the Suffolk Wellbeing Service as well. So yeah, welcome along. My name's Jess. I'm one of the psychological wellbeing practitioners within the Wellbeing Service, and I'll be guiding you through the Low Mood Toolkit workshop today. So what are we going to do in today's workshop? First of all, we're going to be looking at what it is we mean by low mood, understanding how it shows up, the symptoms we might see in ourselves and others. And then once we've done that, we're going to look at some simple techniques and strategies that we can use to help manage our mood and help improve our mood. We'll then let you know what else is out there. So the other kind of resources that we've got available and further support as well. Before we start, just a note on safety. Within the Talking Therapies services, we don't provide a crisis service. So that means we're not available 24/7. But if you are feeling that you're in crisis, if you're noticing thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself, thoughts of wanting to end your life, please do reach out to the services on the screen here. You've got the NHS 111. Option 2 is a mental health line, and that's available for everyone in Norfolk and Suffolk 24/7. You've got the Samaritans on 116123. You can email them as well. You can speak to your GP or contact Childline, and there is the text service as well called Shout, and you text the word Shout to 85258. So what is low mood? Perhaps have a think now how you might define it. What does low mood or depression mean to you? And I suppose the definition will depend on kind of who you ask and what kind of therapeutic approach they might be coming from. But we know that low mood and depression affect the way we feel, the way we think, and how we behave. And in the workshop today, although we'll be saying low mood and depression kind of interchangeably, we're kind of using them as kind of one and the same in terms of the kind of terminology today. I suppose it's worth pointing out that ordinarily they're probably two different things. Low mood, something that we can all experience as humans, part of our kind of emotional repertoire, in the same way we might get feelings of joy, excitement, guilt perhaps. Low mood is something we all experience. Usually when we're referring to depression, we're talking about that low mood becoming very persistent, affecting kind of all areas of our lives and impacting our functioning. So they're kind of slightly different terms, but we use them in this session as one and the same, but they kind of exist on a continuum. So hopefully that's useful to point out. So let's have a look at the World Health Organization definition of low mood then. So first of all, it's characterized by a persistent feeling of sadness. Other emotional changes we might see as well can be feelings of guilt and low self-worth, difficulty feeling kind of interest or pleasure in usual activities that would make us feel that way. And also physical changes in terms of our body. So our kind of sleep can change. We might be oversleeping, undersleeping. Our energy levels change. We often notice tiredness, as well as changes to our appetite and our ability to concentrate. So these are the kind of main themes we will see in low mood. And what we're going to talk about now is some kind of theories or analogies, I suppose ways of understanding low mood. So here's one example. As you can see on the screen here, we've got kind of weighing scales. On one side, we have stresses. So those stresses that can be placed on us in life, whether that's our health, our work, financial difficulties, family perhaps. And then on the other side, we have coping skills. So these are the things that keep us feeling well. That might be sleep, it might be movement, it might be connecting with others, creative expression, it may even be our work perhaps. Sometimes we might find that we have more stresses than we do have coping skills. There are more kind of demands placed on us than there are kind of resources to cope. And that is when the balance tips. We can start to feel stressed, overwhelmed, unable to cope, and that can lead to depression. Another way of understanding depression is through the analogy of the black dog. Now, this was probably most commonly used by Winston Churchill. In his kind of diaries, he would refer to the days when he was experiencing depression as his black dog days. And it's used a lot in folklore as well, and it's a way of kind of I suppose, visualizing the unseen elements of depression. It's the idea that depression is like this unseen force, a kind of constant shadow trailing behind us like a loyal dog. And there's a great video on YouTube that really explains this really well. It's called "I Had a Black Dog, His Name Was Depression." And it really allows us to see those unseen elements of depression and how they impact people. It can be really handy as well, because when we're experiencing low mood and depression, as we've said, it's hard to concentrate, it's hard to think straight, and it's hard to kind of understand what's going on in our own mind, let alone explain that to someone else. So this can be a useful way of kind of, I suppose, sharing with people that we love how we feel. So a great video, and I urge you to have a little look at that after the session today. And a book goes along with it as well, by Matthew Johnstone. It's called "I Had a Black Dog," but really useful for understanding depression and how it looks. Now, I wonder if people have heard of the mental health spectrum, or the continuum, or the scale of mental health. And it's the idea that we all have mental health. Everyone has mental health in the same way that we all have blood pressure. Some of us have high blood pressure at certain times, some of us have lower blood pressure, and it's the same with mental health. We all have the capacity to experience all of these different areas on the mental health spectrum. Everyone has the capacity for depression, even animals. And we can move up and down and around this scale depending on what's going on in our lives. And I suppose when we're kind of in that healthy space, in the green there, that's when we're kind of able to enjoy life. We probably have those normal kind of mood fluctuations. We're coping well with stresses. Doesn't mean that there's no stress, but we're maybe seeing that stress as a challenge rather than a struggle. When we're in that space between the kind of orange and red there, when we're struggling, that's usually when our mental state or the distress is kind of impacting lots of areas of our life, our work, our relationships, our hobbies. And we'd say when we're in that red space, when we're mentally feeling unwell, that distress is really persistent. It's there all the time. And often that's when we don't have the resources to kind of move out of it, and we need to reach out for help and support. And, you know, we might be somewhere in between each of those kind of pointers on the spectrum there. But perhaps have a think today, you know, where am I falling on that spectrum? How is that different from last week, last month, last year? And where do I want that to be? And how can I move through that? And I suppose that's the important point, really, that it's changeable. You know, before we knew a lot about kind of psychology and mental health, we thought our kind of brains were very fixed. But now we know that our kind of mental health is changeable. We have what we call neuroplasticity. So our brains are able to kind of form new pathways and change. So what causes low mood? What leads us to experience depression? Well, there's no single cause. There's a kind of variety of factors at play. So life or world events could be one example. That might be kind of major stresses that we faced in our life. Perhaps loss in its different forms, loss of a loved one, bereavement, loss of work, financial loss of identity perhaps as we age or transition in our life. That can really knock us off balance, that sense of loss. Equally, our kind of nature, our genetic makeup is involved in depression and low mood. We know there's an element of depression that is heritable. It's quite complex interplay. You know, it doesn't just mean if our parents experience depression, then we will as well. It's all to do with the kind of combination of our genes and our environment and that interplay there. Everyday pressures that we face, so as we've said, those kind of demands, those stresses that are placed on us that can chip away, especially if we have lots of things happening at once, which seems to sometimes be the way it goes. So yeah, we might have challenges with our family, finances, especially, you know, with cost of living crises we might be going through, perhaps work, social pressures now, you know, we're kind of expected to be accessible all the time on our phones with all these different kind of social engagements. So that can take its toll. And also how we interpret what happens. So this is more to do with our thinking patterns, the meaning that we give to situations, how we interpret situations can play a role in how we feel. We know that there's kind of a direct link between the thoughts that we have and the emotions that we feel. We don't just experience situations and then have emotions. There's a thought that comes between the situation and the emotion. So, you know, I might be walking down the road and I might see my neighbour, I'll wave and say hello, and I notice that they don't wave back, they look down. There's different ways I could interpret that. I might interpret that as how dare my neighbour not wave at me? That is so unneighbourly. In which case my emotion might be anger or frustration. Alternatively, I might have the thought of, oh gosh, my neighbour's ignoring me, I must have done something wrong. In which case my emotion might be guilt. So you can see there, can't you, the different thoughts that we have about a situation can determine the emotions that we then have. Health problems are another factor to consider. If we're living with a long-term health condition, perhaps chronic illness, the additional stresses that are placed on us because of that can, of course, affect our mood. So all of these things can kind of join together. These variety of factors can impact our mood and lead to depression. What we're going to do now is look in a little bit more detail at kind of the common symptoms that we see. We spoke kind of briefly about a definition, but let's look at the symptoms in a bit more detail here. So, changes to our appetite. We've said, haven't we? When we're feeling low in mood, we might find that kind of we don't have an appetite at all, or we're really craving kind of sugary and fatty snacks often. Same with our sleep. That can change one way or the other. We might find that we're oversleeping. We can't get out of bed. You know, we have our 8 hours, but then we feel like we just need more and more. Sometimes you might find that we're laying awake at night, unable to sleep. And this, of course, is then going to affect our energy. A big part of low mood and depression is that change to our energy levels, that feeling of fatigue, that kind of sluggish heaviness, that lethargy. Concentration, as we said, really difficult to kind of focus on things. And that can be tough when it comes to, you know, connecting with people, conversations, keeping track on conversations, or enjoying our hobbies, you know, being able to read a book or watch a film. And our sex drive often goes totally out the window for different reasons, you know, our confidence, our energy levels, but also kind of evolutionary speaking, if we're not feeling 100%, then there isn't going to be that drive to do that. How about our behaviours then? Depression is characterised by inactivity, a pulling back, a reduction, doing less, disengaging from things. So that might be socially, isolating ourselves, or it might be kind of avoiding tasks around the home and things that we have to do and that we need to do. But that might also be things we're interested in, that we enjoy, that are valuable to us, our hobbies and our interests. And how about our cognitions then? So this is the way we're thinking when we're experiencing depression. And we know that depression changes our thought patterns and the way we process information. It changes the way we kind of see ourselves, the world and others. So let's have a look. So we might notice that we have an increase in negative thinking. So noticing more negative thoughts, or, oh, why is this happening to me? Or, you know, it's raining outside again. Or, oh, I forgot my lunch, I'm such an idiot. You know, those really negative kind of critical thoughts. Our self-esteem reduces, you know, our opinion of ourselves. We kind of lack confidence in ourselves and our abilities and don't view ourselves very highly. We might find that we ruminate, brood on the past, overthinking all the things we've done or should have done or wish we'd done differently. And we can have feelings of hopelessness. The depressed brain will often tell you it's not going to get better. There's no point in trying. That's that feeling of hopelessness, which of course can then lead to those suicidal thoughts, which are a common symptom of depressed mood. And again, if you are experiencing those suicidal thoughts, please do reach out to 111, option 2, or the Samaritans on 116 123. So let's look at our behaviours a little bit more then, because we've said this is a really important part of depression, this inactivity, this reduction in what we're doing. See if any of these on the screen here relate to you or your loved ones when you're experiencing depression. These are all really, really common symptoms that we see. We've said about isolation, that's very common, withdrawing from activities, but also we might find that we kind of are more driven to those perhaps unhealthy or unhelpful coping strategies, like drinking more alcohol or smoking, because we want that kind of immediate relief or to kind of switch off our negative thoughts. We might find that we're more snappy or irritable, particularly with our loved ones, you know, the people we see all the time and we're comfortable around. It's because our kind of window of tolerance, what we're able to kind of cope with, that we'd usually maybe brush aside, reduces. We can't cope with those things as easily. They feel like a big deal to us. And if we're viewing the world more negatively, if we're perceiving ourselves and others more negatively, then we're going to feel threatened, aren't we? We're going to feel defensive. So of course we're going to be snappy. Of course we're going to be irritable. How about caring less about our appearance? That's common. So perhaps not washing our hair or shaving, those kind of things that feel like that huge effort, really. We can stop doing those. And seeking reassurance is quite common. We said our self-esteem, our kind of belief in ourself reduces, so we can be kind of checking, with our loved ones, have we done the right thing? Is that okay? Do you still like me? Or even reassurance with our work, at work, checking and asking our colleagues. So you may have already done this, but have a little bit of a think now about your behaviours. What have you been doing differently? Are there activities that you're doing a lot less of? Are there activities you're doing more of? What have other people noticed in you? Have you got lots of unread messages on your phone that you haven't replied to? Do you keep cancelling the Zumba class that you usually go to? Is there lots of unopened mail piling up? Really kind of bring that to mind, because this is going to be useful when it comes to looking at techniques and strategies. If we've got this kind of self-awareness, it's really going to help in the second part of the session today. So bringing together everything we've spoken about, all of the symptoms of low mood and depression, they form what we call the vicious cycle or the maintenance cycle of low mood. And this is a framework for, I suppose, helping us to understand what keeps us stuck. Because we often feel like that. We often feel like we're kind of stuck. It's Groundhog Day. The same things are happening over and over again. And this really helps us understand why that happens. So we've discussed kind of what leads to low mood, what causes depression in the first place, but what keeps it going is often the way we're thinking and the way that we're behaving. Now, it's not our choice, it's not our fault that this has happened. We're not choosing to think this way or feel this way or act this way, but it is us who are then in control of what we do about it. And that's what we're going to do in the second part of the session. So let's look at this cycle. What does it look like? See if this feels familiar. So when we experience depression, our feelings change. We're tired. We lack motivation. That leads to a change in our thinking. We think, I can't be bothered. What's the point? So we do less. We avoid things. We leave that big pile of washing up. We cancel that social event. And actually, at first, feels like a big relief to not do the difficult thing that feels like it's going to make us feel worse. So we get that sense of relief, which actually encourages us to keep cancelling or keep avoiding and do less and less and less. But in the long term, what happens to our mood when we avoid things that we want to do or things that we need to do, things that make us feel good? Our mood worsens, and it becomes a vicious cycle of doing less, feeling worse, so doing less. And that's where we start to feel trapped. So what we've done here is kind of notice our symptoms, become aware, develop that self-awareness. That's the first step, because once you see it, you don't have to be it. Once you're aware of it, you can take some control. So we're going to start to look at finding a bit of a balance, managing that scale we said about, where the stresses and the coping skills, building those coping skills up so we have the kind of resilience to deal with those stresses. And before we do go on to talk about some techniques and strategies, we just want to highlight how difficult it is to do what we've just done, to admit to how we're feeling. Although, yes, we know a lot more about mental health now, don't we, in kind of modern society, and there's a lot more acceptance of mental health. We tend to be a lot kinder to others than we are ourselves. We tend to kind of beat ourselves up, judge ourselves, criticise ourselves. But actually, all of those symptoms we've just described are normal parts of being human. They're all valid, normal emotions. And we won't kind of be motivated to get better if we judge ourselves and criticise ourselves. So we've got to aim for a bit of kindness and aim for some self-compassion in order to start moving forward. So kind of try to bring that self-compassion to mind as we go through the next part of the session. So we're going to start looking with that self-compassion at breaking the cycle of depression, reversing that kind of vicious cycle or that maintenance cycle. In two ways. So we're going to look at changing our behaviours and we're going to look at challenging our thoughts. So looking at our behaviours and looking at our thoughts to overall improve how we feel. So we've said, haven't we, what maintains our low mood and depression is changes to our behaviour, mainly kind of avoidance and doing less, and changes to our thoughts. Our thoughts becoming more negative or more gloomy. And although at first, when we avoid things, we get a sense of relief, we're not feeling enjoyment, we're not feeling pleasure, and we're not feeling achievement. So in the long term, it starts to make our mood worse and it increases those negative and gloomy thoughts. And it becomes the vicious cycle of the less we do, the worse we feel. The worse we feel, the less we're then able to do. And the cycle kind of goes on and on and on. So we're going to look at our behaviours first, because there's this bidirectional kind of relationship between our mood and our behaviour. We've said, haven't we, when we experience low mood, it changes our behaviour. Kind of we're tired, we're lethargic, we don't have the energy to do things. And that behaviour change then worsens our low mood. So it's that kind of bidirectional relationship there. So what can we do about it? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about behavioural activation, which does what it says on the tin, really. We're using our behaviours or our activities to activate a change in our mood, to activate an improved, more kind of positive mood state. So using what we're doing, our activities, we're going to make ourselves feel better. It's doing more to feel better. Now, when you hear that, doing more to feel better, it kind of sounds a bit easier said than done, doesn't it? Because, you know, if it was a case of just do more stuff, feel great, we'd all be doing it. Nobody would experience depression. So that's why we've got to get very specific when it comes to activating a positive mood state. So like with any kind of treatment for mental health or medical health problems even, there are kind of specific conditions that we need to follow in order to be successful with the treatment. So in the same way as when you are taking some antibiotic medication, perhaps, you must take the exact course for the exact amount of time at the right times each day, you know, all those kind of things. There are also kind of specific conditions with behavioural activation. So we're going to go through these now. So it's doing more to feel better, but in a very specific way. So first of all, we need to work in a graded way. So that means starting with easier activities and then working our way up. Because we're experiencing depression, we can't be expecting ourselves to do what we were doing when we weren't. It's just not possible. It's like asking a marathon runner who's broken their leg to start training again by running a marathon. You just wouldn't, would you? Once their leg's healed, they start by building up the kilometres. They wouldn't go straight back into a marathon. It's the same with us. We're experiencing depression. We need to work our way up to doing what we used to do. So really breaking tasks down and acting in a very graded way. So planning things in, starting with the easiest, moving up to kind of medium difficulty, and then going to the most difficult things that we used to be doing. We also need to have a balance of the different kind of types of activities we're doing, because we want to have the opportunity, I suppose, to feel the different feelings that are available to us. So this is the different things we want to activate, the different emotions that we want to activate through our behaviours. So we need to have routine activities that keep our day ticking over. That might be kind of the housework, that might be kind of meal prepping, it might be our kind of sleep routine. We need to have those routine activities to keep things ticking over, to feel kind of balanced in our day. We also need to have pleasurable activities. So these are the things that bring us joy, bring us pleasure, are aligned with our values. For some people, that might be going for a run. For other people, it might be going to church. For others of us, it might be painting. Whatever it is that's meaningful and valuable to us, that brings that feeling of pleasure. And then we also need activities that are necessary. We need to do the things like paying the bills, going to work, getting the car MOT'd. If we don't do these things, there's going to be a negative consequence. So we want to make sure we're doing them to get that sense of achievement as well. So we're tapping into feelings of joy, feelings of achievement, feelings of value and purpose. We want to have a balance of all of those things. If we were to just do the routine activities, the day-to-day chores, the cooking and the cleaning, we're not going to feel that joy. Equally, if we were just to play PlayStation all day, we might feel joy, but we won't get that sense of achievement from kind of chaotic life outside of that. So that's the balance. We also need to be mindful of something we call boom and bust. So when we start to increase our activity levels, we start planning more into our routine after not doing very much, we might think, oh yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling motivated. We might start cleaning the bathroom and think, yeah, I'm going to clean the bathroom. Then I'm going to clean the living room. Then I'm going to clean the kitchen. Then I'm going to call my friend. Then I'm going to arrange a gathering with all my family. And then I'm going to go out for a run. Because we're feeling good, we take on too much and then we burn out. So it's being really careful to plan things in while we still have the energy, stopping. So when we're doing an activity and we think, I reckon I've got about 50% left, that's when we stop. We don't push ourselves until we're at 0%. We want to have enough in the tank. It's like kind of refueling throughout the day. If anyone's got an iPhone, they'll understand. You kind of probably have to charge it a couple of times a day. And it's the same with us. We can't keep going until we burn out. And then the last condition we've got here is working outside in. So ordinarily, well, lots of the time, we act based on the inside out. So that means we choose to act based on how we're feeling on the inside, rather than a kind of external plan. So if we wake up and we feel tired, we're probably not going to go for that walk. So we wait until we feel energized, or we wait until we feel motivated, or we wait until we feel confident to do the thing. But in depression, and in lots of situations, that's kind of like putting the cart before the horse and expecting it to move forward. It's not going to happen. Action is what creates motivation. So we need to work from the outside in. So not based on how we're feeling on the inside, but based on our external plan. Knowing if I do this planned activity, despite how I feel, my positive mood will probably follow. It's like if ever you've had to do an exercise class in the evening, you think, oh God, I really can't be bothered, I'm so knackered. You do the class, you think, God, I feel great, I could do another class. And it's exactly that, acting first and allowing the feelings to follow. So now I've gone through all of those conditions, we could have a little think about something we could do. So the idea is we'll pick an activity that perhaps you used to do, you've stopped doing since experiencing depression, plan it into your week. This is really key. What we write down gets done. If we don't plan it, we haven't kind of got that routine, it's hard to do it. So planning it is really key, and then breaking it down into those small steps. So if perhaps we used to cook a big Sunday roast every week and we used to love it, but it would take 4 hours, now we're experiencing depression, I'd say that's probably too much. So we're going to break that down. Perhaps on one day, we're going to plan to check what ingredients we've got in the house. On another day, we're going to find a recipe for a meal that we're going to cook. On another day, we're going to do the shop. On another day, actually, we're going to prep. We're going to chop up the vegetables and put them in the fridge in a Tupperware. And then the next day, we're going to do the cook. So you can see that it's really kind of breaking it down into small steps so that it feels manageable and it feels doable. Another example might be if you used to love reading and you could spend kind of 2 hours really tucking into a book, but you've been experiencing depression, your energy and your concentration's reduced. We might actually set the goal of saying, I'm going to do 2 pages each day before bed, or, you know, matching it with something else that you're doing in the day so it becomes easier to engage in. Because when we do that, we allow a sense of achievement. If we plan something that's way too difficult, we're going to feel rubbish. We're going to feel like we failed. So if we make it easier, we kind of, allow for that kind of feeling of achievement, under promising and over delivering. So let's talk about exercise and our mood. Now, I prefer to use the word movement because for me personally, exercise brings back horrible memories of PE at school and dragging myself around that field. So movement, I think, is a better way of kind of encapsulating that. Exercise doesn't have to be something in the gym or on the sports track. It's moving our body, gives us benefits for our mood. So why does that happen? Why does movement allow us to kind of feel good? What does it do? Well, it releases lots of neurotransmitters. So these are kind of chemical messengers in the brain, things like dopamine, serotonin, noradrenaline, are endorphins in our body. And these do so many different things. A great one is our sense of kind of focus and clarity. They've had studies where they've looked at, they've tested people at a quiz, a group of people that have been on a brisk walk and a group of people that have just been sitting, the people that went on a brisk walk scored much higher on the quiz. So it really improves our kind of focus and our mental clarity and capability. It also makes us more receptive to joy and positive emotions because these chemicals kind of stimulate the reward systems in our brain. It reduces anxiety by kind of regulating our stress centres, and endorphins act as an amazing pain relief. So there's loads of things going on when we move our body. It also increases our energy levels, which can feel really counterintuitive, especially when we're experiencing depression, we're lethargic, we're tired. Moving feels like the opposite thing of what we want to do. But actually, movement can lead to more energy than rest sometimes. Again, lots of studies show this. When we move our body, it gives us more energy. And it also works on our self-esteem. So this is something we said is a big thing in terms of our cognitions. We kind of don't value ourselves, we criticise ourselves when we're experiencing low mood. But chemical changes that we've said about, as well as our kind of sense of accomplishment and our view of ourselves, our body image, really changes when we move our body. Sleep quality as well. This is a big one, isn't it? You know, we've said sleep can be really difficult when we're low in mood, but when we have a regular kind of movement practice, we're wearing our bodies out as they kind of should be used, and then it allows us to have a more quality kind of sleep at night too. So here are some examples of kind of moderate intensity activities, and I mean, we can be creative as we like. It might be water aerobics if you've got access to that near you. It might be riding a bike, dancing around the kitchen. It might be pushing a lawnmower. Going shopping is a good one to get your steps in, and also the kind of carrying the shopping as well. It might be cleaning the house. Cleaning's a great one, or hanging the washing out as well. Hula hooping, roller skating. There's so many kind of different things we can do. Carrying our grandchildren, you know, all of those things can be a great way to kind of move our body. So it's about getting creative with it. And if you want some support around kind of movement and healthy lifestyle, there's services in Norfolk and Suffolk. So in Suffolk, we've got Feel Good Suffolk, and the website is on the screen there. In Norfolk, we've got Feel Good Norfolk, and again, the website is on the screen. There's also Active Suffolk and Active Norfolk. They're organisations that can help you find activities to move your body. And there's another brilliant website called We Are Undefeatable. And this is mainly aimed at people with long-term health conditions. And the website's really good because it considers all the kind of different ways to move, considering your very individual and kind of unique situation. Because there might be people who are kind of watching today and thinking, well, I can't do that because of my physical health. You know, there are lots of things on there I can't do. So this website's great for exploring ways to adjust and adapt what you can do and what suits you as an individual. So that's www.weareundefeatable.co.uk. So we're going to talk a little bit now about food and our mood. I think probably more and more kind of research nowadays into the role that kind of what we put in our body, what we eat has on how we're feeling. And some of it's kind of anecdotal, isn't it? You know, we might notice that when we've had, I don't know, a big greasy fry up for breakfast, perhaps after a few hours we're not feeling as good as if we were to have kind of like a whole grain, like a cereal, I was going to say bread or porridge or something like that. Sometimes we kind of notice it ourselves, but there's also research to kind of back that up. So interestingly, a huge proportion of our body's serotonin, so that kind of feel good chemical, it's involved in feeling good, but lots of other kind of functions in the body as well. But a huge proportion of it is produced in our gut. So a lot of research now is referring to the gut as the second brain because it's involved in a lot of how we feel and a lot of our kind of emotions. So I'm wondering if you've noticed a change in your appetite or your relationship with food since experiencing low mood. This is some of the things we commonly hear. People saying, I haven't been able to cook a proper meal in days. I actually have to keep reminding myself to eat because I haven't got those hunger drives. I don't feel hungry at all. Or all I do is snack. And we know, don't we, there's different effects depending on who we are as individuals and the kind of changes in our appetite. Sometimes if we have too little food, we can feel kind of exhausted and dizzy and tired. If we have too much of certain foods, we can feel sluggish. So we'll go through a few kind of tips and strategies here. Lots of them you might know, but really important, I suppose, to point out these basics that we sometimes forget. So just eating regularly, really. If we notice that we haven't got an appetite because of our mood, we'd encourage kind of little and often. So small things, a piece of fruit or something like that, throughout the day to help us feel well. And having a routine with it as well. If we find that kind of our routine's a bit out of whack, then it confuses our kind of body's rhythm. If we were to try and eat at the same time each day, so if we had our lunch at 1 p.m. every day, and we do that consistently for kind of a month, we probably will then notice that our appetite and our hunger drives are activated, because our brain learns through that kind of repeated pattern. So if we're doing it at the same time, that can really help bring those drives back. And the type of foods we eat as well. So we know that there are kind of brain healthy foods. So what we mean by this is foods that help us kind of stay sharp, stay alert, improve our kind of brain functioning. So that's we all know this, the fruits and veg, the real kind of leafy greens, whole grains, eggs, oily fish, the nuts and the seeds, all of those things that kind of boost our cognitive function. Processed food, so these are your sausage rolls, your crisps, your biscuits, your burgers, your fries, the things that naturally we're probably going to be reaching for if we're feeling depressed because we're tired, and we want that immediate kind of pick me up. We want a quick fix. So we're going to be drawn to the sugary and the fatty foods because our body wants the energy. That's part of our kind of evolution, isn't it, to reach for that. But equally, we notice that we'll probably have a bit of a crash and we might feel more sluggish and it might kind of worsen our mood. So we talk about, adding in some of those kind of brain healthy foods as well, if we're noticing we're drawn to these things. And water's a big thing as well. It's a lot of water we kind of need to consume as humans in a day. Not many of us realise this. We need to have about 1.2 litres, so 6 to 8 glasses a day. And we can notice similarities between kind of dehydration and low mood symptoms. So if we're dehydrated, we might have headaches, which then affects our kind of concentration. It makes us a bit kind of slower in our responses. Also affects our mood and our energy levels. So water's a big one. And there's ways we can kind of make it easier for ourselves. Sometimes I know people like those kind of big bottles of water that you can buy, so you've got it kind of all day with you. And it gives you encouragement as you go through the day of how much you're drinking. Maybe having kind of access to glasses throughout the house if you're moving around the house throughout the day, so you've always got something there. But yeah, it's trying to make it kind of easier and more accessible, isn't it? So how about sleep then? We've said sleep disturbance is a huge symptom, isn't it, of depression? And again, it's bidirectional. Our mood affects our sleep affects our mood. When we don't sleep well, our mood is worsened. A rule I live by in life is don't ever trust your thoughts when you're tired, because they will be lying to you. And we accept it in kind of toddlers, don't we? And the little people in our lives who say, oh, they're upset because they're just tired. But we kind of forget that tiredness affects us as adults as well. So let's go through some kind of whistle-stop quick tips on improving sleep. Now, for more detailed kind of resources and information around sleep, there is a sleep workshop on our websites, Improving Sleep webinar. So do go to that for more kind of detailed advice. But let's whiz through a couple of things now. So caffeine. We all know this, don't we? Caffeine is a stimulant. It kind of keeps us awake. So we'd say kind of keep it to the morning, because caffeine can have a half-life of, well, it depends on our metabolism, but it can stay in our system for like 8 hours or so. So we really want to kind of keep that to the morning, because it can make us feel alert and it can really help. But in the afternoon, it can really affect our sleep. Consistency with our kind of sleep and wake times. So trying to kind of get into bed and get out of bed at the same time every day helps our body's kind of circadian rhythm to keep in flow. Even if we find that we haven't slept well, it's really important to stick to that same wake time to keep that kind of consistent routine. It's actually argued that the consistency of sleep is more important than the amount of hours that we get. Yeah, and our kind of pre-sleep routine. So having that kind of wind down time about an hour before bed to prepare your brain for sleep. And again, we do this with toddlers, don't we? Babies in our lives, you know, they have the bottle, the bath, the story, and yet we rush around as adults and then go, right, bedtime, and expect ourselves to just fall asleep. So it's having that time for relaxation, making our brain aware that sleep's on its way, avoiding that kind of blue light and that screen time so our body can naturally fall asleep. Exercise, we've said this, haven't we? Moving our body is great for sleep. Eating before bed, we don't know if cheese does give you nightmares. We think that might be a bit of a myth, but if we do eat too close to bed, it can disrupt our sleep, especially if we're having sugar, because you know, all that digestion that's going on can make it hard to sleep. And this is one that we all do, especially, well, lots of us, when we're experiencing depression, that kind of urge to have a nap throughout the day so we can catch up on sleep. But again, that catch up thing is a bit of a myth. And actually, having a nap in the afternoon is kind of like having a snack before your main meal. It makes you less hungry. Having a nap before going to bed makes you less sleepy. So trying to avoid those naps so that you're as tired as possible when it comes to sleep will hopefully allow that sleep quality to be much better. So onto our thoughts then, breaking that kind of vicious cycle of depression using our thinking. So we've said, haven't we, when we experience depression, our thoughts change. The way we process the world, the way we make sense of the world, and the content of our thoughts often becomes more negative when we're experiencing depression. We have thousands and thousands of thousands, 60 odd thousand thoughts a day. Some of them are neutral, some of them are positive, lots of them are negative, especially when we're experiencing depression. We're likely to have more of those, what we call negative automatic thoughts. They're negative because they're kind of biased towards the negative, they're not factual, and they're automatic because they're usually kind of happening outside of our conscious awareness. They're kind of springing up automatically. We don't often kind of consciously say, I'm going to think negatively about this. It's just kind of happening. So we're going to look a little bit at what we can do about that. But first, here's some kind of common things we might see in our thinking when we're experiencing depression. So that rumination on the past, thinking about all the things we wish we'd done differently, feeling hopeless that things aren't going to get better, those suicidal thoughts that we've mentioned, helplessness, feeling like we can't do anything about our situation. And generally, as we've said, feeling more negative about ourselves, others, and the world around us. We also have a bias in how we process information. So when we're experiencing depression, we are more likely to notice the negatives in our environment. If somebody says 5 nice things to us and 1 negative thing to us, we only remember the negative thing. We're looking out for the negatives. We're looking out for things that confirm our negative beliefs. If we think, I'm not good enough, nobody likes me, then we're going to be looking for all the ways that that might be evidenced in our day-to-day lives. So if somebody yawns when we're in a conversation, we go, aha, there, see, I'm boring, I knew it. So it's really being aware that your brain is going to be looking out for and noticing more of those negative things than the positive or neutral things when we're feeling low in mood. So what can we do about it? So we're going to talk about a technique called retraining your thinking, or cognitive restructuring. And this is because we tend to kind of just accept our thoughts as accurate, factual reflections of our reality. But often they're just perceptions, they're opinions, there are interpretations of the world, which can be very skewed towards the negative and then make our mood even worse. So we want to kind of become aware of these negative thoughts and then test them out. Is it a fair reflection of reality, or is it a bit distorted and a bit skewed? So thought challenging or cognitive restructuring helps us to identify and challenge our unhelpful and negative thoughts. And we've said it's normal, isn't it? It's common to have negative automatic thoughts, but if we're having them all the time and we're believing them, then that can really affect how we feel and also the choices that we make. So it's useful to be aware of them and to kind of notice them and not just take them as fact. So this technique looks at our belief in the thoughts that we're having. As we've said there, how much do we believe that this thought is true? And is it? Is it true? And the overall aim is to not just think positively, because that's not realistic. Life isn't all positive and great and rainbows and flowers. We want to have a more balanced thought process based on the reality of the situation. So what is actually going on? A more balanced, a more rational, a more objective way of thinking, because that will then improve our mood. If we're seeing things how they really are, as opposed to seeing them more negatively than they are. So here are some common unhelpful thoughts that you may notice in yourself when you're experiencing depression, but also when you're not. You know, these are common as humans. We think in this way. So the big one there, I'm not good enough. Very, very common belief, I suppose, underlying lots of these negative thoughts here. I always mess things up. I'm going to fail. People think I'm useless. Everyone is better than me. My partner thinks I'm lazy. No one will talk to me at the party. I'll never have any friends. These are all really common thoughts that we might see. Very black and white. Very kind of rigid, distorted ways of thinking that haven't been fact checked. So that's what we're going to do in the next part here. So challenging our thought involves taking our thought to court. So imagining we are in a courtroom and our thought is on trial, and we are going to weigh up the evidence for and against the thought that we're having. So we're taking in the whole picture rather than just our kind of narrow tunnel vision that can happen when we're experiencing depression. We're zooming out and we're taking in the whole picture to make sure we're having a balanced thought. So let's take that example of I'm rubbish at my job. Okay, where's the evidence to suggest that that thought is true? Well, yeah, I did miss a deadline at work last week and my appraisal highlighted areas for improvement, and a colleague did say I didn't see myself at work at the minute. Okay, so there's evidence that suggests that it might be true that I'm rubbish at my job. But where's the evidence to suggest that that's not true? That doesn't support that thought? Well, actually, at my appraisal, there was a lot of things that were highlighted that I've been doing really well. I've been asked to train some new colleagues in the service. My recent project that I spent a lot of time on was successful and got the outcomes that we wanted. And a colleague complimented me in the team meeting when I gave a presentation the other week. So we've looked at the evidence to suggest that perhaps I am rubbish at my job. We've looked at the evidence to suggest I'm not so rubbish at my job. And a more balanced thought, considering that evidence, might be I may not be firing on all cylinders at the moment, but I am a hard worker and a valuable member of the team. So there, we're not kind of sugarcoating stuff. We're not saying, oh, I'm amazing. We're just taking in the reality of the situation. And it may be that when you start kind of challenging your thoughts, you don't quite believe these new, more balanced thoughts at first. And that's okay. It takes time and it takes practice. But really the key approach is to step back, pause, ask yourself, is this a fact or is this my opinion? And then to gather the evidence for and against that thought to come up with a new, more balanced perspective. So a few more things before we come to the end of the session today. We're going to talk a little bit about self-compassion. And often when I say the word self-compassion, people go, oh, no, that's icky, hippie nonsense. Or people see it as a weakness. Being kind to yourself is a weakness, or it's just feeling sorry for yourself, or just letting yourself lay on the sofa all week. But I'd say self-compassion is actually a really difficult thing to do. It takes courage and it takes strength. And it's all about totally accepting yourself without any judgment. So warts and all the ways you're feeling and acting and thinking and behaving at the moment, accepting it. Riding the wave of what's going on without making it worse with kind of self-criticism. Praising yourself for the things that you have done, but also focusing on, okay, but what do I need to do next? What change do I need to make? And there's lots of different ways we can kind of embody self-compassion. It might be with that thought challenging. It might be saying to ourselves, how would I talk to a friend in this situation? Often the likelihood is we wouldn't talk to a friend in the same way we're talking to ourselves. So that can be a nice thing to maybe do in the moment. If we're being very mean to ourselves, think, oh, why have I done that? I've messed that up again. I'm an idiot, whatever it might be. Maybe say, Would I say that to a friend? Or bring to mind a friend, somebody you love, somebody you trust. What would they say to me in this moment? That can be a really nice way to embody self-compassion. I know some people like to think of their younger self, picturing their kind of inner child, their younger self, and say, what would I say to that person in this moment? There's all sorts of ways that we can do it, kind of slowing down, doing lots of kind of breath work and breathing exercises. There's a whole kind of form of breathing techniques called compassionate breath work, and that can be a way as well to kind of embody that self-compassion. So something to maybe have a look at after the session today. Another, I suppose, approach is mindfulness, which I think lots of people have now heard of, and it's about kind of being fully present in the moment. So often we find we're worrying about the future and what's to come, or we're ruminating on the past and what's already been. Very rarely are we in the here and now. So this is, I suppose, an approach for kind of zooming out and taking in a more objective perspective, because often we allow our negative emotions or thoughts to kind of drive us, like we're on just the roller coaster of our emotions. So this allows us to pause and notice the moment in the here and now, ground ourselves, recognize that we're okay. And this might be through breathing techniques again. It might be just kind of slowing down, but it's kind of a way of regulating our emotions. So we're not thinking about what's next or what's happened. We're just in the here and now. And again, lots of research around the benefits of mindfulness, meditation, all those kind of things for depression. Gratitude journaling is another thing that's kind of evidence-based to be effective for improving our mood. And this, I would say, isn't kind of dismissing or pretending that life isn't tough and there aren't loads of stresses, but it's about kind of training our brain to notice when there are kind of things to be grateful for, or there are some positive things. It's not pretending they're there when they're not, but it's training ourselves to notice them, because we said, haven't we, when we're experiencing low mood, we tend to have a negativity bias where we only notice the negatives. So by keeping a gratitude journal, so noting down things we're grateful for or kind of happy about each day, that kind of builds that kind of muscle, I suppose, in the brain for gratitude. So different ways you can do it. It might be at the end of the day thinking of 3 things that you're grateful for, perhaps people you're grateful for, the highlight of your day, something you're proud of yourself for, or the qualities you like in yourself. Lots of different things you can do for that. And if you Google it, you know, gratitude prompts or journal prompts, there's lots of tips out there. So this might be something on your list. I was grateful my dog was pleased to see me when I got home. I was grateful for my home after a rainy dog walk. I was grateful that a smile to a stranger when I was in the shop today, or a funny video my friend sent me, or a memory I have from childhood. Could be anything at all, but just the practice of regularly doing it builds that habit and strengthens that muscle to notice things that are good. Now, we're all social creatures, aren't we, as humans? Some of us more introverted, some of us more extroverted, but the reality is we are social beings, and so connecting with others is something that can improve our mood. It's a kind of innate emotional need, and it's good medicine. You know, getting out of our own head and being around others allows us a bit more of a better perspective. And there's lots of ways we could do it, as is shown on the screen here. And if you feel actually I'd like some support to do that, to feel more connected to people around me, then perhaps you could explore working with one of our peer advisors within the talking therapy services, or finding out if you've got a social prescriber. So these are people who can connect you to opportunities in your local community. Social prescribers are often linked to your GP surgery, but your local citizens' advice or kind of Google search would tell you if you have a social prescriber, and they can help you find kind of hobbies, community events, those kind of things to improve your social connections. And self-care is just something we wanted to mention as we're coming to the end. And really, self-care can be absolutely anything. It's what aligns with you and your values. What do you need to feel well? What are your kind of pillars of well-being that hold you up? I know for me, sleep is a key one. You know, having my sleep routine, even on the weekends, is what makes me feel well. Equally, movement is a big one for me. Having to get out and go for a stomp with my dog each day allows me that kind of headspace. For other people, it might be spirituality. It might be, you know, attending church or readings from whatever kind of religion you belong to. For other people, it might be nature, getting out in nature, spending time in nature. For other people, it might be group sport, you know, having that session when you play football on a Sunday. It might just be, you know, the classic one of having a bath, having, you know, that half an hour dedicated to yourself each day. Maybe it's painting. Maybe it's learning to say no and having boundaries. Maybe that's self-care for you. It might be drinking more water. It might be having more of those kind of brain healthy foods. Whatever it is for you, it's finding those things that make you feel well and are kind of your non-negotiables that kind of hold you up and keep you feeling okay. So a few last minute kind of messages at the end, that it is okay to kind of stop, withdraw and lick your wounds for a while, you know, doing a bit less, hiding away for a little bit is fine. It's just when it becomes kind of persistent that we need to do some work on it. So it's okay to not feel great and to have a bit of space and time out for yourself. Give yourself time, you know, it takes time to heal and to get better. And communicate that need for help. This is one of the hardest things, isn't it? Admitting and reaching out and saying how we're feeling, but that is a huge, huge step to feeling better. And being able to accept that help, that's a hard thing as well, isn't it? When it's offered, you know, we often dismiss it or deny it, but accepting the help when it's there. And looking at the basics, you know, our physical needs, we've said about our nutrition, our sleep, water, those everyday basic things, maybe tackling those first. So what else is out there in terms of support? So we've got lots of online workshops. We've mentioned the sleep workshop. We've got workshops on anxiety as well, relaxation, different elements of kind of relationships, interpersonal interactions, mindfulness, self-esteem, self-compassion, all those things we've kind of touched on today. If you want more detail on those, then please do use our other workshops that we have. In terms of one-to-one support, we have lots of different offers here as well. As talking therapy services, we offer mainly cognitive behavioural therapy based approaches. So that might be guided self-help sessions with somebody like myself, a psychological wellbeing practitioner, or full-length kind of cognitive behavioural therapy with a CBT therapist. There's counselling on offer as well. Lots of different talking therapies. If you were to refer into our service, have an assessment with us, we can explore what would suit you best. And as I mentioned earlier, we have peer advisors, so people with lived experience of mental health conditions who have kind of have their own personal recovery stories, and they can share those with you, listen to you and support you to access resources that might be useful to motivate you and improve your mood. And if you find kind of employment is affected by your mood, or your employment is affecting your mood, you know, whatever it might look like for you, we have employment support advisors as well who can help with returning to work, staying in work, or finding kind of rewarding and sustainable work as well. So before we finish up, we just wanted to let you know also about our social and community events. So we have online and in-person events happening as well. Just have a look on our websites to find these. Lots of things kind of going on in local community spaces, libraries, where you can learn more about mental health and how to support others as well. So as we said, all of our information is on our websites. So if you'd like to have a look on there, you can find all of our workshops. You can find how to refer yourself for one-to-one support as well, or a health professional or GP can refer you into the service too. So all that is left to say is thank you so much for watching and for being with us today, and yeah, wishing you all the very best. Take care. Bye bye.